Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we unpack the secrets buried in corporate filings, and tonight we're digging into a shareholder meeting report that might just have a few surprises. Let's just say some votes were closer than others. Today we're looking at JEWETT-CAMERON Trading Company Ltd. and their recent gathering of shareholders. This report, like many others, is a look behind the curtain to see how the company is doing and what the people who own a piece of it are agreeing to. So the big event happened on the 27th of February of 2026. This is where shareholders get to weigh in on important company decisions. It is like the annual checkup for the company and its leadership. First up, the shareholders receive the big picture. The directors report the financial statements and the auditor's findings. Basically, they got the rundown on how the company performed financially up to the 31st of August of 2025. Think of it as getting the final report card for the year. The resolution to accept these reports, including the financial statements and the auditor's opinion, was approved. This is a standard procedure, but it's crucial because it shows the shareholders are generally satisfied with the transparency and the results presented. Then things got interesting. They voted on how many directors should be on the board. The decision was to set the number at 5. Now, this might seem like a small detail, but the number of directors can influence how decisions are made and how quickly things can get done. More directors can mean more diverse opinions, but also potentially slower processes. This vote to fix the number of directors at 5 passed with 1,903,898 shares voted for it, and 265,109 shares voted against. This means there was a pretty clear majority in favour of keeping the board size at what was proposed. It's a solid endorsement for that specific structure. Next up, the election of directors. These are the individuals who will be steering the ship for the next year. The big news here is that the votes for some of the nominees were quite split. For instance, Charles E. Hopewell received 10,27692 shares for his election, but had a substantial 629,290 shares withheld or abstained. That a significant number of shareholders felt hesitant or chose not to actively support his election. Looking at the other directors, Chad Summers received 1,123,225 shares for and only 533,757 withheld or abstentions. Ian Wendler got the exact same vote count 1,123,225 for and 533,757 withheld or abstentions. Michelle Walker and Sabriana Pierce also saw strong support with their votes for being over 1 million shares. While they all got elected, the differing vote counts, especially the high number of withheld or abstained votes for Charles E. Hopewell suggests there might be some underlying shareholder sentiment that bears watching. It signals that not all directors have unanimous backing. Following the director elections, they voted on appointing and setting the pay for the auditors. This is like hiring the independent referees who check the company's financial plays. This item was approved with a very strong vote of 1,937,256 shares for and 0 against. That is a pretty clear signal that the shareholders trust the current auditors and are happy with their remuneration package. This is generally a good sign of confidence in the accounting and oversight processes. Then came the vote on the acts and deeds of directors and officers. Think of this as a general endorsement of how the leadership team has been conducting themselves. This resolution passed with 1,131,218 shares voting for it and 525,764 shares voting against. This is a more divided vote compared to the auditors. A significant portion of shareholders voted against this, which could indicate some dissatisfaction or specific concerns about the actions of the directors and officers over the past year. It hints at potential areas of concern that aren't detailed in this filing, but are clearly on some shareholders' minds. Next up, a very closely watched item, the advisory vote on executive compensation. This is where shareholders give their opinion on how much the top brass is being paid. It is often called a say-on-pay vote. This vote was quite close with 1,557,049 shares voting for and 611,957 shares voting against. While it did pass, the number of shares voting against is substantial. This indicates that a significant chunk of shareholders feel the executive compensation might be too high or not sufficiently tied to company performance. This could be a point of contention going forward if this trend continues. It is a clear message that the board needs to pay attention to shareholder sentiment on pay. Finally, they voted to transact other business. This is typically a catch-all for any other matters that need to be addressed. This vote also showed division with 949,500 shares for and 666,212 shares against. Similar to the vote on the acts and deeds of directors and officers, this is another area where a considerable number of shareholders expressed disagreement. It suggests there were other agenda items or proposals that didn't sit well with a significant portion of the owners. The large number of non-votes here too could point to shareholder apathy on some issues, or perhaps a deliberate choice to not endorse certain proposals. And now to wrap up the filing, we have the exhibits. The most notable here is Exhibit 104, which is the cover page interactive data file formatted in inline XBRL. This is basically the digital format that making the filing machine readable for regulators and investors. So what is the story here, JEWETT-CAMERON Trading Company Ltd. is navigating the usual corporate processes, but with some clear signs of shareholder engagement and perhaps some underlying unease. On one hand, the financial reports and auditors were approved with strong backing. However, the split votes on director elections, the acts of directors and officers, and executive compensation signal that not all is smooth sailing. The high number of withheld or abstained votes for some directors, and the significant opposition to executive pay and the acts of officers suggest a segment of shareholders is paying close attention and may have specific concerns. This isn't necessarily a red flag, but it is a clear indication that the board and management need to be mindful of shareholder sentiment and potentially address those issues directly. The company's direction seems to be generally supported, but the details of how leadership operates and is compensated are clearly areas needing close observation. One notable risk is the potential for increased shareholder activism or a push for changes if these divided sentiments persist. Alright, that is our breakdown of JEWETT-CAMERON Trading Company Ltd's shareholder meeting report. What is your take on these numbers and what they signal for the company's future? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this analysis was valuable, hitting that like button really helps, and subscribe for more deep dives. Don't forget to check out the Discord in the description. Thanks for watching. See you next time.